A little past noon on a Saturday, a modest line of cars wound around the corner of a parking lot outside a small-town car wash. The scene seemed typical. Teenagers with soaked clothes, soapy sponges, and wet hair, laughing as they splashed each other and waved buckets at passing drivers. But this wasn't just any weekend car wash for spare change or school fundraisers. These girls, led by a tight-knit group of high school friends, had set up shop with a determined mission: to help pay for their friend Zoe's chemo treatment. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. Zoe, a quiet and fiercely funny girl, had been diagnosed a few months back. Her friends had rallied around her from the beginning with visits, texts, and endless FaceTime calls. But over time, they started to see the toll it was taking on her family, not just emotionally but financially. Treatments weren't cheap, and the bills had started piling up, adding stress to an already painful situation. So they decided to roll up their sleeves and scrub every car in town if it meant they could help ease that burden, even if just a little. The energy was contagious. The girls joked around and played music, belting out lyrics while suds splashed from their sponges. Drivers who came through seemed to pick up on their spirit, tossing more cash into the donation bucket than anyone expected. Some even handed over $20 bills for a simple wash, saying Zoe's friends were doing something remarkable. And the girls, even through moments of exhaustion, stayed positive and determined. For them, this wasn't just a car wash. It was a way to help their friend and show her that they were with her in every possible way. Then, right when everyone was settling into a steady rhythm, a sleek car pulled in, turning more than a few heads. It was a bit of a showstopper, a polished black convertible that looked almost too perfect to even need a wash. Out stepped Caitlin. Caitlin was a few years older than the rest of the girls, and everyone in town knew her, or at least knew of her. She wasn't a celebrity in the traditional sense, but her confidence and style had a way of making her presence known. Caitlin didn't just stroll up. She glided, sunglasses perched on her head, and a smile that hinted at a mix of amusement and curiosity. She didn't come off as someone who'd ever washed a car herself, let alone would need to get her own washed by a bunch of teenagers in a parking lot. But she stood there, appraising the scene, and gave a little nod of approval. The girls were a bit taken aback, half wondering why she was here, half wondering if she was just passing by for a laugh. But Caitlin had a purpose. She waved over one of the girls, asked a few questions, and quickly understood what they were doing. Her smile widened, a glimmer of something almost mischievous dancing in her eyes. So she said, loud enough for most of the group to hear, "Who's washing my car?" Without missing a beat, Zoe's friends threw up their hands and grabbed sponges, jokingly arguing over who would get the honor of washing Caitlin's convertible. It was part fun, part distraction, and maybe a small part admiration. Caitlin had always been a bit of a mystery, and now here she was, offering up her car as if it were some sort of prized possession for them to take on. The humor of it all made Zoe's friends laugh. Somehow she was turning a charity car wash into an almost surreal event. As the girls scrubbed her car, Caitlin stood back, watching them work, occasionally tossing out exaggerated encouragements that made them laugh even harder. "A little more elbow grease, ladies," she called out, adding a theatrical cheer when they managed to reach a particularly stubborn patch of dirt on one of the tires. Her humor was dry, but not in a way that felt mean. She was, in her way, lightening the mood, giving the girls something to laugh about in a day that was otherwise heavy with purpose. The car itself, despite its immaculate appearance, seemed to take well to the attention. The girls worked with a mix of focus and laughter, wiping down every inch until it gleamed. Caitlin watched this with a quiet approval, almost as if she were inspecting the work of a particularly promising group of apprentices. Once the car was finished, Caitlin didn't just hand over a few bills and leave. She looked around, hands on her hips, taking in the scene with a thoughtful look. Then, in a voice that carried just enough weight to make everyone pay attention, she made an announcement. "All right, here's what we're going to do." She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope, and without any flair, handed it over to the girl who'd been leading the wash. "This isn't for the car. This is for Zoe." The girl blinked, looking from Caitlin to the envelope and back. It was thick, way thicker than anything anyone had handed over that day. How much?" she stammered, completely caught off guard. Caitlin shrugged in that effortlessly casual way of hers. "Enough," she said, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Just make sure it helps Zoe out." The air was thick with a mix of shock and awe. For a moment, no one knew what to say. One of the girls muttered a quick thank you, but Caitlin just waved it off like it was no big deal. She nodded toward the line of waiting cars, flashing a grin before heading toward her newly sparkling convertible. "And keep up the good work, okay? You girls are doing something pretty amazing here." With a quick rev of the engine, Caitlin was gone, leaving the girls in stunned silence, the envelope still clutched tightly in one of their hands. The line of cars moved forward, but the girls were still buzzing from what had just happened. Caitlin had just turned what they thought was a routine charity wash into something none of them would forget. In the minutes that followed, they opened the envelope. Inside, folded neatly, were crisp bills, a lot of them, way more than anyone had expected. Caitlin had practically doubled their entire day's effort in one go. She'd given them more than money. She'd given them a story, a moment that made them feel seen, respected even. And while Caitlin's exit was as smooth as her entrance, the impact she left was anything but subtle. She'd come in, offered humor, encouragement, and an unanticipated generosity, then slipped out, leaving the girls with a renewed sense of purpose and a little more hope than they'd started with. It wasn't a fairy tale ending or a grand gesture with lots of words. It was, in true Caitlin fashion, just enough. The girls continued working, but they did so with a bit more laughter, a bit more confidence. The jokes were louder, the scrubbing was fiercer, and the spirit was undeniable. Every so often, one of them would glance at the envelope, still in disbelief. They joked that maybe they'd keep a photo of Caitlin's car on the wall of the garage. "In case we ever need inspiration," one of them said, only half joking. By the end of the day, they were soaked, exhausted, and a bit sunburned. But as they counted the donations, the real magnitude of what they'd achieved started to sink in. They hadn't just washed cars. They'd been part of something bigger, something real. Each soapy handprint and one high five was a piece of a story they'd tell for a long time. A story about friendship, loyalty, and how one unexpected visitor could make everyone believe just a little bit harder. They packed up the parking lot, emptying out as dusk approached. As they loaded the last of the buckets into the truck, one of the girls looked around at her friends, a smirk spreading across her face. "Well," she said, "who knew washing cars could turn into this?" Another shrugged, still a little awestruck. "Guess it's just what happens when people care, and you know, Caitlin." They laughed, shaking their heads as they finally headed home, each one carrying not just the memory of the day, but a renewed sense of what it meant to be there for someone. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.